Warning, this podcast was produced by two men who still think that swearing is both big and clever. As a result, it contains quite a lot of it. Therefore, this podcast is not suitable for children, unless they're really fucking cool children. Yes, people, Dave Fensom here with another episode of Pop Collaborate. And listen, this is episode 2 of our Best of 1993 specials. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, we dropped it earlier in the week. Go and check that one out. It'll make a little bit more sense if you do. I think also available is our Best of Hip Hop special. So if you're wondering why there's no hip hop records in these choices, it's because we dedicated a separate list to that. Throughout this episode, we've got contributions from people that are other podcasters, generally good people, people with good taste in music. So we'll be peppering those in throughout the episode. So give a shout out to who we got on here. We've got Stephen and Sam from True Cult Pop. We've got Gaz from Track One Side One. We've got Andrew Bird on here, who runs a music podcast called Funny Taste in Music. Check that one out if you've not heard of it before. And we've got our friend Cliff on here from Devil Times 5, a great horror movie podcast. I think that's everyone. So I hope you enjoy this episode, guys. We will be back with more stuff in the new year, coming in with 1994. We do a big thanks in this one, but again, just to reiterate it here, thank you so much for everyone that's joined us on this journey this year. It's been a weird year for me, man. Looking forward to starting a new one next year. Big up to everyone that listens, and a special thank you out to Neil Meadowcraft, who sent us a Christmas present today. We're not allowed to talk about it until after Christmas, apparently, but big shout out to him anyway. All right, man, take it easy, guys. Take it easy. Speak to you soon. Bye. Yes, people, it's Dave Fensom here again with another episode of Pop Collaborate. Listen, joined as always by Mr. Chris de Greer.
Hey, everybody.
Yes, this is part 2 of our top 10 of 1993. If you haven't heard part 1, then stop.
Collaborate.
And listen to that one instead. Because otherwise it won't make sense and we'll probably refer back to it. So basically this is part 2. We got basically 10 to 5-ish last time. It's complicated by the fact that we've got the same albums in different orders. Fucking, do you know what I mean? Let's not dwell on it too much.
Exactly. Don't think about it too much.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. No. As before, we are going to be letting you know what some of the listeners, where some of the albums featured in some of our listeners' lists. We're talking about some of that. Yeah. Also, in this episode, we'll be dropping in some little sound bites that we've got from other podcasters, people that are involved in the world of music, or in some cases horror movies, and just finding out what they were listening to, what their favourite albums of '93 are. I think we've got some good stuff there. Yeah,
really appreciate those guys helping us out and giving us their opinions.
Yeah, big up all those guys. We'll shout them out at the end. Yeah. So look, let's do a quick recap of where we are. So albums we've been through so far. We've been through Krista, your number 10, which was Afghan Wigs
with Gentlemen. Yep.
My number 10, which was Monster Magnet Super Judge. Yep. Which was also your number
8 or 7.
Okay, then we didn't do my number 9 because we're doing that later on. We did my number 8, which was Primus, Pork Soda. My number 7, which was Sepultura, KSOD, which was
my number 5, maybe
something like that. Morphine, which was my number 6. Cure for Pain. Breeders, which was your number.
My number 4 or 5.
Okay,
something like that.
So yeah, we really are all over the fucking shop with this, aren't we?
Again, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
This
Judgment Night, the original soundtrack.
Yes, that was what we finished part 1 with Judgment Night,
and that was my number 6, number 5.
Maybe.
I can't remember. Knows? It doesn't really matter, does it? We'll put them on the website.
Sure.
Yeah, do that.
Fine.
Do that.
But
yeah, these are all albums that we like. I mean, let's face it, they're albums that we've liked for 30 years, 29 years, so they've survived. So, right, let's crack on, shall we?
Okay, we're going to do one that is on both of our lists. It's kind of further down mine. It's in the bottom half of mine, but it's in the top half of yours because you were more of a fan at the time
I
of the
absolutely
album.
was, as you can find photographic evidence of on our website.
Yes, you can.
So yeah, this is, unsurprisingly, Depeche Mode, Songs of Faith and Devotion.
We did a whole episode on this.
Yeah, we did.
You know, we had a lovely guest on the episode as well. Rich Wilson came in.
The amazing Rich Wilson, who was going to guest on this episode, and we kind of flaked on it. So if you listen to this, Rich, apologies.
But yeah, no, this is a terrific album. Like I said, I wasn't as into it at the time. I knew the singles.
Yeah.
And I liked them. And I especially liked I Feel You and Walking in My Shoes.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know the album. And it was only really later on that I was like, okay, this is all pretty decent. And it was only really whenever we did the full album, or the full episode on it, that I really dug in.
Yeah, I mean, this is a brilliant, brilliant record. I love it dearly. It's not my favourite Depeche Mode album. That's Violator.
Right.
But there's not much that separates it. You can hear exactly what I think about this record going back and listen to that episode.
For sure.
So I won't go too much into it, but this for me, it's a very confessional record.
Lots of that.
A lot of regret, a lot of come down pain.
Yes. Oh, totally. But this is, right in the middle of whenever Dave Gahan is full on drug monster, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so there are many songs referencing drugs. There's also many songs referencing religion, and so that those cross over quite a lot. But the thing is, whenever you've got Gahan doing his kind of rock and roll Jesus, backed by the rest of the band, still at their peak, really.
Yeah.
Just making these songs, that's a winner. That is an absolute winner.
Yeah, this is a beautifully soulful record for a band. Often the criticism of electronic music is that it's soulless, it's computer music, and I defy you to find a more soulful record that was released in 1993.
Right, sure.
I mean, obviously Dina Carroll, but
I don't know, Kenny Thomas up on that as well. But
big Kenny T.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, love this record.
Right.
I mean, I've got loads to say about it, but I don't think it needs to be said right now.
This is the thing. Because we did the full episode on it, we really dug deep into every song on that and talked lots about kind of where you were at the time and how big a fan you were. So go and listen to the full episode. But I mean, more to the point, just going back and listen to this album again, man.
So we're picking songs from it. I've gone with this, which is In Your Room.
Yes,
which is a glorious, beautiful song.
It's terrific.
Absolute live highlight. The last tour with the fucking great Anton Corbijn video choreography.
Right, sure.
Amazing. Can't wait to see him next year.
I know. Yes,
Can't wait.
We've got tickets. So as long as everything goes right and there's no other pandemics and no one else in the band dies, we're in.
We're in.
But yeah, I've gone with, because it was on my list as well, I've picked a song and I've gone with Walking in My Shoes because it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I had heard I Feel You too many times to go, that's the one I want to put into a playlist, but Walking in My Shoes is gorgeous.
I love I Feel You as well, though.
Anyway, it's terrific, but yeah.
Perfect.
We did have quite a few people who had that album of our listeners who sent us in their lists who've got it in there. So we've got Mr. Corcoran, he's got it in amongst other stuff like Sultans of Ping, Casual Sex and the Cineplex. So, it's up and down.
Yeah.
Martin Young, good old Martin.
Big Martin.
Martin has stereotypically gone with things like Janet Jackson and Mariah Carey as well, because he's a big pop fan. He loves a bit of that. But he has put Depeche Mode in his top 10. So fair play to you, Mr. Martin. Phil Guthrie, old friend of mine, he had to have Depeche Mode in. He looks the type that would just have Depeche Mode. That's exactly what I would expect. And DJ Mike Luttrell has got Depeche Mode in the middle of his as well. And
Sweet.
He did have Zeropa, as we referred to in the last one.
And big up Mike Collins. That list is in there as well. Mike Collins' list is a pretty good list. It's got the Lemonheads in it though, which I'm not entirely convinced by. And the Boo Radleys. Oh man, Jellyfish, fucking Jellyfish. It's the only list with Jellyfish in it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's a unicorn list there, or a unicorn band in a list there.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, let's move on to one of your choices.
Yes, we're going into one that is on my list but not yours, and similar to the Breeders in part one. I think it's more because it just wasn't your thing at the time. I think you'd enjoy it, but James Laid, and I didn't get into this at the time as well. I remember the big singles. I remember Sometimes. I remember Laid. They were in all the indie clubs every fucking week. Laid especially every week. And they are amazing songs. I think they're some of the best James songs, and I love James. But I didn't get into the album straight away because of a lot because of my snobbery. And I was kind of a few albums into James, and I was just looking for the new thing.
Right.
And so I was dismissive. I went,
Sure.
oh, right, yeah, no, this is fine. This is good. But, it's just James. And so I didn't dig in. It was a couple of years later that I really heard it over and over and over and started to go, fucking what? This is a great, great album. It has some of their best songwriting on it, I think. This song that's playing at the minute is the intro. It's Out to Get You. It's track 1 on there. And I put this on rather than any of the big singles because the build on this, it starts off just so quiet and so gentle, and it swells and soars, and it goes into one of a classic Tim Booth James chorus, and it sort of takes you up with it, and I love that about it. But the whole album is an absolute treat, and it's not just like this, and it's not just like the kind of the jingly jangly guitar thing that you might know from the singles. There are some more electronic bits. There's some real kind of stomp along chanting things. It's so well put together, and I wish I'd got into it at the time, because I think I would have gone and seen them on the tour if I'd known, but I didn't, and that's the way life goes. I've heard so many of these a million times, especially the big singles, but they still really resonate with me.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of need to make a bit more time in my life for James, because I'm listening to this now, and I'm like, this is right up my street.
Oh yeah, no, stuff like this would be definitely.
I love stuff like, I love this kind of melancholic kind of build, lilting builds. As I say, I think when I worked in HMV, like the greatest hits was on. And I was like, I like way more of these songs than I realised I did. And they're just always one of those bands that they were someone else's band.
And it's also very easy to dismiss them as, they're sit down.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I knew them for. They were in that kind of wonder stuff category for me. Of course. In that kind of, slightly wacky kind of...
students.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And if what you've heard over and over and over is sit down, and then maybe Laid, which is not novelty at all, but it can be a little bit twee, that's fair. There is a lot more to James than that.
There's more to James than this.
But the other thing about this album, and I suspect there's going to be a couple of other albums we'll talk about which you'll have the same relationship with, this really viscerally reminds me of a certain time in my life.
Yeah.
I can visualize things when I hear these songs that I go, fucking hell, yeah, this era, this year, I can really, see the people I was hanging out with, and I can, just feel being in the room with those guys. And it's one of the ones that does that most to me out of all of the albums on this list.
I love those moments, man.
That's
I
music.
Love those moments, man. That's that sense memory that's just so much more like fucking poignantly visceral than anything else that you can do.
Yeah.
And I don't understand people that don't love music, where they get that from.
Sure.
Maybe it's football matches. I don't know. But,
True. Yep.
Yeah. Fuck it. I love it, man.
Yep.
Right. Great choice, man.
Indeed.
I need to listen to it. I wish I had more to
fair dues,
contribute.
man.
I don't. I'm afraid.
Fair dues. But the only one other person of our listeners had this in their list, and that's Kat Rose.
Big up, Kat.
Hey, Kat. So she's got it in hers, but she's also got that up with East 17.
Yeah.
And Dennis Leary's New Cure for Cancer. Apparently, she was saying that just at the time, that was one of the things she was listening to.
Lovely.
And Levelers and Blur. So, it's very indie. And East 17.
And Dennis Leary, yeah.
That's what we were all listening to at that point.
Obviously.
Yeah. All right, well then, we're now on to one that was in both of our lists again.
Okay.
And this one, I wasn't sure if this was going to be your number one.
No. And almost any other year it probably would have been, but there's a very, very good reason why it's not.
Right.
So, this is Undertow by Tool.
And for anyone who has never met Dave or never talked to Dave in a pub, you might not know that Tool is pretty much Dave's favourite band.
Yeah, I mean... And I say that with the caveat of knowing that Tool fans are some of the most insufferable
you don't want to lump
world.
yourself in with them.
Yeah. But look, man, I heard this album in 1993.
Oh, you did? So you were straight away on this?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
like, I hadn't heard Opiate. I'm not OGT from 92 on the first EP.
Right, sure.
But someone had this. I saw the Sober video
Yes.
on Headbangers Ball.
Right, yep.
And I think I mentioned it to someone, and they had the album. This became a very big album within my little close-knit group of friends, and I listened to this album a lot, and immediately I was drawn in by just how fucking dark it was, how introspective it was, how just it wasn't as obvious. There was a lot of angst-ridden personal politics out there, and these were all slightly oblique, more arty lyrics. It reminded me in some ways of like bands like Jane's Addiction. It just felt like there was something to think about. There was a puzzle to solve. You kind of put your head in there, and you felt like, okay, this, you got to unpick this a little bit. You've got to commit something to it to get something from it. And I really, really liked this record. And then, you know, I started to listen to a lot of other stuff, and, you know, kind of told they got less to the front of my list. Mm-hmm. And then Anima came out
96.
and fucking blew everything away.
Right, sure.
Absolutely blew everything away. And this is the thing. Like, for me, Undertow is a brilliant prelude to something fucking exceptional.
Gotcha. Yep.
And it lives in the shadow of that record a little bit for me. But whenever I go back to it, there's just moment upon moment upon moment that is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to have heard it produced slightly differently.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think there are some, the way that drum kit sounds. There are things that they discovered later in their career. The way they got things to sound later on. I would like to hear some of these songs recorded with some of those things in mind.
Okay.
I do think the production on this album lets it down a little bit, but not loads. It's Sylvia Massey on this one. Starts off with Intolerance, then into Prison Sex, which is, you know, they don't play Prison Sex anymore, but it's fucking, I mean,
do they not at all?
I don't think so. I think it was, there's some kind of thing about Maynard's mum really didn't like it. I think Shouldn't She Pass, they don't do it.
All right.
And, you know, and I think maybe it's even a little bit on the nose for them these days as well, because it's got that fucking, it's, you know, it's a song about the circle of abuse, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Got some very, very unpleasant visceral lyrics in the middle of it.
Certainly does.
Sober, Jesus Christ, Sober. I'm hearing it right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Still brilliant.
but then it's the album tracks that occasionally come out on set lists, and every time one of those songs comes out, like you go see him live, and it's like, oh, fuck, it's Swamp Song. Jesus Christ. Went to see him the second night, went to see him in London this year. They played Undertow. Yeah. And it's like, you got 4 Degrees on there. You got Crawl Away. You got all of these songs that are just like, they're not Tool songs that come to mind immediately.
Sure, yeah.
You hear them and you're like, oh no, that song in and of itself just stands up completely. It's head and shoulders above 90% of rock bands out there.
Yeah.
And it's just an album track.
Right, yeah.
You know, and there isn't, you know, if you take out kind of Disgusticate, you know, the Tool was still very fond of doing the big kind of experimental kind of jokey hidden track. And if you kind of take Disgusticate out of this, I'm sure there's some diehard fan that's going to tell me why I'm a dick for calling it a joke.
Of course,
song.
because they're Tool fans.
Of course. But there isn't a bad track on this record.
Right, sure.
This started something that has lived with me for a very long time. Love this record. Dearly, dearly, dearly. One of my favourite records of all time, really.
Yep.
I feel like I'm damning it with faint praise, but it's an amazing record. It's just not Anima. And that's...
very few things are.
Yeah, but there you go.
Whenever you say you heard it in 93 and you were into it straight away, I'm trying to think, did they tour over here before Anima, and did you go and see them?
They did. I didn't. My friends went to see him. My friends went to see him at like the Roadmender and saw him at the, like LA2.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to those shows. I didn't see him properly until Anima.
Okay, right.
Like that. Were you at that show, the Astoria?
No, I wouldn't have been at the first one. I think the first time I saw him was like 98 or something.
Right. I mean, I've seen him like 16 times at this point. Something like that.
Damn. Now, well, fair enough. But like I say, I thought that might be your number one because I know you're such a big fan. It was further down mine because I didn't hear it properly at all for years and years and years afterwards. I knew Prison Sex and I knew Sober, but that was kind of it. It wasn't one of the albums that my mates were playing, so it wasn't on. And I don't think I even ever remember seeing the album in stores, but I wasn't looking for it. But anyway, so I missed the boat on that one. Going back to it, of course it's great. Of course it is. But
this was a very Luton record as well, because one of the people that was into it as well was our friend Nick Zinanos,
who's the DJ at the clubs. Yeah.
So we would hear these songs at the clubs as well.
Yeah.
So they kind of lived, and that's such a thing. I'd love to, I'd love to hear from people about that. For people that were in their regional rock clubs, what were the songs? Because there are some bands that are so big in one place. Yeah. And I had it with Tool when I moved from Luton to Dudley and went and went to a rock club and asked the guy if he'd play it, and he's like, "Oh no, it's a bit dark for here, mate." Right, I was like, "Oh right, I'm somewhere very," and I fucking hated it. Yeah. If you went to a rock club in London, you went to the Dome, Tufnell Park, or you went to like Shove It or whatever it was called in the 90s, you'd hear Life of Agony everywhere. Never fucking heard that in Luton. Do you know what I mean? Different places had different. Bands
Belfast, whenever I was going out 92, 93, and some of it is obvious, like the early Therapy songs were massive in Belfast because they were our boys. But I remember Monster Magnet Evil being played to a full floor.
Yeah,
never heard it again in a club ever, unless I played it. And you're right. So it is. It's very dependent on who's in charge of that club at that time and what they like and what they decide to push.
Yeah, so if you had any of those moments, if you lived in a regional club, just get in touch via Twitter or email or whatever. Let us know, man. I'd love to read some of those out.
Well, we had loads and loads of people had Tool on their list as well from our listeners. We've mentioned most people who've got it. Your usual suspects, Ben Collins, etc. Always in there. We do have Jake Givens, who is the guy from the US who does the videos about. What it was like the first time you ever heard Rage Against the Machine and stuff like that. He got in contact, and Tool is on one of his. It's on his list. I kind of knew what his number one would be, but I wanted to know what the rest of it was going to be. He's gone with the as well. But he also has Breeders' Last Splash, so well played, sir. Thank you for getting in contact. But yeah, loads of people agreed with you on Tool being very high up in a lot of lists.
Yeah, they're one of those bands, man, aren't they? They've got a very, very feverish fan base.
They absolutely do.
So for song choices for this, you went with...
I went with Sober, which is the one we just played underneath us there. But you've gone with...
I went with Prison Sex. We've got,
we've dirty boy.
We've gone with the obvious choices here, I guess. But I Prison Sex, it had to be because it was the first one I heard.
Sure.
And it's still one of my favourites. It's like that song just resonates with me.
Yeah.
That makes me sound like I got fucked as a kid, and I didn't for the best part of my memories.
Unlucky, mate.
I'm an ugly child. Oh, God. Trigger warning. Oh, God. But yeah, I love that song. I think it was an introduction to everything for me. It opened up something very important, and my anus. Oh no, I've done it again.
Done it again, Dave.
Oh fuck it. That's what that song's about. Oh no, I've done it again.
Done it again.
Shit, blood and come on my hands.
But fuck it. Two brilliant choices. Let's face it.
Yeah, aren't we good? Two brilliant choices there from us. What a couple of masterminds.
God, we should definitely...
We should do a podcast.
We should pick more songs.
Hey Dave, hey Krista, it's Gaz here from the Track 1 Song 1 podcast. 1993 was an insane year for me. The year I went to my first big gigs, the year I joined my first band, the year I got my heart broken. Oh. So yeah, there was so many fucking incredible albums released in 1993. You've got Phil Collins, Little Angels, Jamiroquai, the list is fucking endless, right? But the one for me that stands top of the charts is The Wild Hearts, Earth versus the Wild Hearts. And it'll always remind me of Endless Summers and playing Road Rash 2 whilst listening to this album constantly. My tape copy literally melted in the tape deck after being rinsed so fucking much. I mean, I've always absolutely fucking adored the Wild Hearts, despite constantly snatching defeat from the jaws of victory time and time again. Ginger Wilder is an absolute national treasure and one of the greatest songwriters this country has ever produced. Stick down your fucking hype sticker. And so that's my choice, guys. Cheers for keeping me company in the van this year, and onwards to 1994. And a bit of Chakademius and Pliers. Cheers, guys.
All right, well, let's do the next one. And this is another one that is on both of our lists. We've done a full episode on it, so go and listen to that if you want to hear the full shebang. But Nirvana's In Utero.
Yeah, so we did a whole episode on this. We talked at length about it. Won't recap too much.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you want the kind of the pop notes on it, I think this is the third album, the second kind of major label album.
Yeah.
This is the one that came out with the weight of the success on it.
Exactly.
Produced by Steve Albini, which was a very kind of a contrary choice at the time for the label. In a lot of ways, I think this is their most successful record. It's my favourite Nirvana record.
It's wonderful. It's just wonderful.
It's full of light and shade. It's full of brilliant production, brilliant songwriting. It's raw as fuck. It's
that's the thing.
The biggest band in the world putting something out like this. It's a remarkable thing, and it makes me nothing but sad that we didn't get to see more.
Oh, mate, this is such a tragedy that the suggestion of where they might have been going was evident in this record, but we never got to hear it.
Yeah. So, it is what it is. It's not a left field or edgy pick.
This was nearly my number one. I was between my number 1 and 2, and they swapped around. I've ended up with this as my number 2.
For me, again, the fact that In Utero or Undertow aren't my number 1 is just... This was such a great year.
Right.
And, I'm well aware that whatever... I'm, at this point, in 1993, I'm 17, I turn 18.
18, yeah.
And I think for most people, the year they're 17 and 18 is probably the best year of music in their life.
Yeah, you always, kind of fasten onto that, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think objectively, when we look at these years and we look at what has endured, I think objectively from a music pantheon point of view, these were some exceptional times.
Mate,
we're not getting, like 2002 hasn't produced this many classic albums that people are still talking
seriously,
about.
mate, whenever I put that list together to put up for people to look at and see what they wanted to pick out as their favourites, it is a huge list. It's massive, and it is just wall to wall. Oh my god, that album! Oh, that's still a classic. People still talk about this one. Hugely influential stuff, and it's it's over 100 records. So that's more than 2 every week you're talking about coming out that are massive records. It's a great
year. But so that was your number 2. It was
Indeed.
my number 3.
Indeed. And so song-wise, you chose Dumb, which is the one we heard, and I am going to put on Tourette's.
Great.
Because it was one that we didn't pick. Whenever we did the episode, I didn't pick it because we just did a couple of different ones. We wanted some others that we agreed fully upon. But I fucking love Tourette's. It's always been a classic favourite.
It's a great song.
Also, loads and loads of the listeners included the Nirvana record in their lists. Again, we've mentioned loads of people who've already had it, but we haven't said Andy B. Got in touch on Twitter, he's got it in his. Alongside Slow Dives, Soulaki, and Liz Fair's Exile in Guyville, and Stereolab. So,
Stereolab.
Yeah, quite. He's gone full on across the board there, but he's also got Nirvana. And Rob Middleton, he's only given us a top 3. But he's got Nirvana at number 1 on there, and then Bjork and the Levelers.
I mean, I'd say Nirvana was probably the most popular choice of anything. If we were doing a reader's list,
yeah, maybe so.
I mean, apart from the fact that we'd have to do multiple votes for Fugazi's In on the Kilt Taker by Niall Bakewell.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Some people give us 5s and some give us 10, so it's impossible to look at. But yeah, casting an eye across, Nirvana is probably one of the very, very top ones.
Hi, this is Cliff from the Devil Times 5 Horror Podcast. Dave and Krista have mentioned me a few times on Pop Collaborate and Listen, generally accusing me of only ever listening to Benga Boys, Scooter and 2 Unlimited, which is absolutely untrue because I don't really like 2 Unlimited, though I did see them live a few years ago and they were really good. They were only doing 10 or 15 minute set, but Anyway, my favourite album of 1993 is, and forever shall be, In Utero by Nirvana. Basically for the same reasons that Dave and Chris gave it in their special episode about it. Do not listen to the remastered version. It is rubbish and wrong. I need that Steve Albini rawness, and you do too. Other contenders for my number one include Poor, Typo Negative, Revolting Cocks, the Judgment Night soundtrack, Wild Hearts, Anthrax, Wu-Tang Clan, Sepultura, Snoop Doggy Dogg, all great 1993 albums that I still listen to today. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, keep listening to PCL, give my podcast Devil Times 5 a go. Dave guests on an episode talking about horror superheroes. Thanks guys, see you soon.
So now, so your number one is on my list, so we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
So my number one, if you know me at all, and you've been doing a bit of a process of elimination, it won't be a surprise. If you don't, and why would you, after all, it's Slip by Quicksand.
And I do know how big a band this is for you.
Yeah, man. I mean, look,
for you.
This is just an album that I never, ever get bored of, and I listen to this album a lot.
Right.
This is probably my most listened to album.
Really?
It's, I'd say, probably my second favourite album of all time.
Okay.
And these songs just spoke to me and continue to speak to me. Kind of, when I first heard it, it was mixing that kind of hardcore sound that I loved. Obviously, reminiscent of Fugazi, who I liked as well, but it had a slightly more poppy aesthetic to it in a way. But as with every band that I love, it's all in the rhythm section. You've got this kind of, Sergio Vega, I love his bass lines. I love the work that he did.
It's very bass forward, this song that we're hearing.
And I loved what he did in Deftones, went on to do that fucking bouncy, great bass. Got a really fucking strong drummer under there as well. And then you've got these kind of great rhythm parts, great lead parts as well. So much of it to me, though, was about Walter Schreifels and his, just this vocal delivery that he does here. It's unlike anything that he's really done since he was really kind of going for it. These are such impassioned vocal lines. And just bits and pieces of lyrics here and there. That was it. It was not even about whole songs and sitting down reading and pouring through the lyrics. It was about sound bites that caught me and just kind of set off things in my mind. And I sat down recently with Gaz from Track 1 Side 1 podcast, and we talked about this album a lot, and I've realised as I've gone on that so many of the lyrics here really relate to an ADHD mindset. And they're songs about fitting in and songs about feeling different to other people and not understanding why the way you perceive the world feels different. And I look back on it and I go, of course this is why I related to this. The playing on this record is incredible. The riffs on this record, the songs, the compositions, there's just nothing about this record that I don't like.
Right.
It still inspires me. It takes me back to a time I feel young.
Yeah.
I feel one of these records, I can put this on if I've had a few beers and I'll put it on headphones and I just feel fucking like I want to sing every word.
Glorious.
Like when they got back together in 2015, because I saw them supporting The Offspring. I never saw them do a headline show first time around.
Okay.
And when they got back together, I was so worried that they wouldn't bring it over here or it wouldn't be good over here because they didn't have quite the following that they did in the States over here.
Oh, were they bigger over there?
They were bigger in the States, bigger in the alternate scene in the States. And I was so worried that it wouldn't be good that I flew to Chicago to see one of the shows, and it was one of the best moments of my life. I was just, my mate Darren went with me, and we just I sang every word of every song.
Brilliant.
At the front of the gig, everywhere I turned, there was someone else doing the same thing.
Another 40-year-old white man.
Yeah, just catch each other's eyes, never met, and would just be like, fuck, this is happening.
Right.
And it was the best.
Oh, that is great.
Just the fucking best, man. I love this band. They were never ever this good again, right?
Okay, right.
Second album, Manic Compression, is great. It's got some great moments. They came back. Interiors is fine.
Okay.
The last record they just did, Distant Population, I really like it. They've gone from being a 4-piece to a 3-piece. One of the guitarists had a few problems drugs wise. They've recently been touring with Stephen Brodsky of Cave In. I am always interested to see what they do. I mean, I saw them earlier this year in Boston with Clutch.
Of course you did.
With
It was
Clutch
on
and
that,
Helmet. Yeah,
that ridiculous lineup. Right?
But this record, I would advise you, if you've never heard this record, to seek it out and to dig in past it, to just check out some of the hooks, some of the riffs.
Yeah.
Give it some time. It is a beautiful, beautiful record. My favourite record that came out in this year by a decent
It wasn't
margin.
even close.
No, it was never going to be anything else. It was never going to be anything else. I as I say, my life wouldn't be the same without this record. It's that important to me.
Wow.
It really is. It's a fundament. It's a cornerstone of my life, this record, and I fucking love it.
Fair play, dude.
There you
Fair
go.
play. We only had one, I think, listener included in there. Is it Jarrett Dapier?
No, we had a couple.
Oh, did we have a couple?
Yeah. Mike Collins. It's on Mike Collins.
Oh, sorry.
It's on Mike Collins' list. It's on Darren's list.
It's
on Darren's
on ones
list.
I've kind of crossed out by now. Then. It is. It's Darren's as well.
Jarrett Dapier's
Jarrett
list.
Dapier is on there alongside. Again, we've got Slow Dive on there. It's Super Chunk. And he's also got Wu-Tang and Tribe Called Quest, which are ones that we had in our hip hop.
And I tell you
top
what,
10 as
this is another one of those records where it was, if the DJ in your local area was playing Dying Alone, which is a single, which is a thing, then you were probably investigating this band and finding out a bit more about this band.
Right.
If they were, they just didn't have a following over here, and that's the other thing I like about it. It's a band that's felt like my secret for a
I
long
had never
time.
heard of them until you probably told me about them 5 years after this.
Mate,
Didn't know at all.
It's a glorious band.
And the song that we just played is the one that you're putting into the playlist, yes?
Yes, it is.
And it's called Head to Wall.
Head to Wall, and it could have been any of them, man. I mean,
Right, I see.
I sat there going through it, and I was like, shall I put Phaser, or shall I put Head to Wall? Shall I put Dying Alone? Shall I put Slip? You know, it could have been any of those songs.
Gotcha.
There is not a bad song on that record.
Hello there, yeah, it's me, Stephen Hill from the True Cult Pop podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Sam Slight. How you doing, Sam?
I'm well, thank you, Steve. How the devil are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks, Dave Christer, for asking me and Sam to do a little bit on 1993 and our favourite albums of 1993. An interesting year. I mean, look, you know, when we go through the albums that came out that year, I think it's some amazing ones. You know, there are great records that came out in all different genres. You've got, 36 Chambers, Enter the Wu-Tang came out that year. Got Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest in hip-hop, like the two fucking great albums. Siamese Dream, Verses by Pearl Jam. In Utero by Nirvana came out that year as well. Last Splash by The Breeders, all in that kind of alternative rock thing. Modern Life is Rubbish by Blur, sorry Dave. In kind of the big, huge kind of arena pop bands, you've got Zooropa by U2. I've spoken about the last great U2 album. Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode. Self-titled The Wedding Album by Duran Duran, the one with Come Undone and Ordinary World, and they're brilliant albums. Debut by Bjork, I know they don't really like that, but that is still really good. In metal, you've got Soul Searching Sun. River Runs Red, I should say.
Yes.
Life of Agony came out that year. Don't know why I said Soul Searching Sun. It's my favourite. Chaos AD by Sepultura. Bloody Kisses by Typo Negative. I absolutely fucking love that record. You got Carcass, Heartwork. It's brilliant. Wolverine Blues by Entombed. So influential in, the last decade of sort of crusty, rumbling D-beat hardcore. Most of that inspired by Wolverine Blues. I was very, very close to picking that. It's a great record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, its footprint on, hardcore and like death and roll, like Cavell Attack and stuff like that as well. I mean, I suppose that comes maybe a little bit later with To Ride, Shoot Straight and Speak the Truth, but yeah, Wolverine Blues are fucking brilliant.
Absolutely massive. And the biggest selling death metal album ever made, Covenant by Morbid Angel, came out that year as well. Like, another really, really great record. So it was a good year. But I have picked, hope you don't mind me going first, Sam.
Not at all.
I picked Slip by Quicksand is my favourite. Now, Quicksand are one of the all-time should have been massive bands, I think. Because in 93, when grunge was happening, and then you there's almost a moment where post-hardcore stroke emo looked like it was going to be a big deal. And I think if it was going to be a big deal at that point, Quicksand were going to be the band that did it. This came out on Polydor, so it came out on a kind of subsidiary of a major label. And that kind of melding of New York hardcore, alternative rock, and I mean, there's a Smiths cover on the bonus track of this record, and that kind of like Johnny Marr, Morrissey, that kind of romantic poeticism, I think is amazing. And there is just something about this record which still to this day, I can't believe that not everybody in the world knows a song like Dine Alone, which is just phenomenal. Everything on this record feels like it should have appealed to anyone who had any interest in forward-thinking, emotionally open guitar rock music at that point. It's a brilliant record. It's such a brilliant record. Everything on it. It's 39 minutes. It's basically a perfect 39 minutes. What a band they are. Amazing. That would be my pick. What's yours, Sam?
Mine is also a debut LP released in the year of our Lord 1993. I've gone for Undertow by Tool.
Yeah, do you know what? I deliberately didn't mention that because I thought that would be what you picked, to be honest. But yes.
We were talking beforehand and it was like, what's the best album of 1993? And basically, it is In Utero, but I think neither of us wanted to talk about that because it's been done so many times before, including by Dave and Krista in a fantastic episode of our Collaborate and Listen a little while back, which I thought was an excellent one. So I think rather than retread that ground, let's talk about some quite up-itself prog rock. But is it really? And is it more just kind of alt metal? And are they all just having a laugh? I love Undertow. To be fair, I would probably rank bottom in terms of Tool LPs, but that's the strength of Tool's output that I still think this is one of, if not the best album of 1993. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I was lucky enough to see them for the first time in 2019. They announced a European tour, but they weren't doing any UK dates. So I was like, well, I don't know if they're ever actually going to come here. So I went over to Prague basically for about 24 hours to go and see them. And they did Intolerance live, and I was like, fuck me, this song's so good. It's so heavy. And in amongst the kind of more lengthy and ponderous material that they'd go on to do with Lateralis and 10,000 Days, getting something as concise and just angry and riffy as Intolerance, it's fantastic. And then obviously Prison Sex and Sober, the two big singles. I mean, Adam Jones's stop-motion animation that makes up the video for Prison Sex is so disturbing, so horrible.
It is a great shout, and it's a brilliant record. Yeah. And it's a good year.
It is a good year. You know, In on the Kill Taker by Fugazi and Pork Soda by Primus, the darkest Primus album. Fucking brilliant. Love it. Might stick My Name is Mud on after we finish this.
Okay, well, we finished now. That's it.
Okay, I'll do it now.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next year for 1994. It's like every album was brilliant, basically, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
See you then.
All right, well, look, we're nearly at the end of this. We've got one more to go. But before we do that, I made a list again of the top 10.
Have you checked it twice?
Twice. The best-selling singles of 1993.
Are they naughty or nice?
Awful. Terrible.
Right.
There's two different ones, because there's the best-selling singles that I did, and then there's also, I put a Twitter poll out of all the number one singles.
Yes, you did. You opened yourself up to the Twitter polls.
Because there were only 16 number one songs in 1993, mostly because, people like Meatloaf and whatever, and Whitney Houston were there for ages. Mm-hmm. Only 16, and so I put out a poll to see which one people voted for as the best, and it came back. Some people were voting for Mr. Blobby, so I don't think it was taken entirely seriously.
Well, you think you put a free-to-enter, no barriers poll on the internet. You think people won't take that seriously?
No, I'm disgusted.
The number one song is Boaty McBoatface.
But it came back that the voters on Twitter voted the best song as Meatloaf's I Would Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, cannot have been the best number one song.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone's vote counts unless they send us a video of them listening to it 5 times in a row.
Oh, God. Yeah, You don't deserve to be able to
with a close-up on your face, because your eyes will betray you.
But the top 10 best-selling singles, and let's just go through these, and we can decide which one's the best and which one's the worst between you and me. Mm-hmm. Right, so the top one is Meatloaf. It was the best-selling single of the year. I Do Anything for Love. Number 2 is UB40's I Can't Help Falling in Love with You.
Well, it's not that.
Fucking shocking.
It's just, I can
cannot
say,
be that.
Whatever the opposite of that is,
right?
It's that.
Fine.
Take
Ace of Base is at number 3 with All That She Wants,
which is a song ruined by the fact they're Nazis.
Yeah, that is a shame. That's a shame. 2 Unlimited, No Limits, number 4. Gabrielle Dreams, number 5. Mr. Blobby with Mr. Blobby, which apparently was the first ever eponymous number one single. There's a fact for you.
Yeah, okay.
But goddamn, that's awful. Shaggy, Oh Carolina.
I mean, I'm going with that.
Right, so far. Hadaway, What Is Love?
What is it? Did he ever find out?
I don't think he did.
Okay.
No, but that was the only one in this list that was never a number one. It got to number 2. All the rest actually hit number 1 in the charts. This was only number 2. Culture Beat, Mr. Vane, and Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You.
I mean, those are some mostly awful songs.
They are really, really quite dreadful.
Of those songs,
Yes.
I would say I Would Do Anything for Love, and Oh Carolina.
Carolina.
Particularly the Ras Bumperclap mix.
I think Hadaway's What Is Love is good fun. It's good, silly fun. I do like All That She Wants. I don't like as much as The Sign by Ace of Base, but I think it's okay. But if I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Hadaway. And that's a fucking shocker.
I mean, that is bad,
That's
isn't it?
awful. But I think I'm safe in saying that the worst one is Mr. Blobby, Mr. Blobby.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's just like the novelty shit of it.
Is it worse than UB40, though?
I would rather listen to UB40 than Mr. Blobby.
Yeah, but let's go. Is a cynical cash grab work that's that bad worse than a genuine artistic attempt that's that bad?
Which one is the genuine artistic attempt, by the way?
I'm not sure.
Is it Blobby?
But I'm fairly sure Mr. Blobby is in one of the new versions of UB40. I
Fucking
can't help.
Blobby. Oh dear.
No, it has to be Mr. Blobby because Noel Edmonds is involved.
Oh, I see.
Fuck Noel Edmonds.
Yeah, is it extra badness?
Yeah.
No, a dreadful year for big selling singles, as we call it.
Terrible, man, terrible. I mean, Pete, how do you feel about Whitney Houston's?
I Always Love You.
Yeah,
I think it's terrific. The thing that puts me off saying that it's higher up is because it was released in '92. It was the end of '92 and went into '93. That's why it was.
I love that it's a technicality.
But that's why it's also only at number 10 in the best-selling things, because it had about 2 months of 92
Jesus Christ.
that you couldn't count.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's
finish this fucker off, I guess.
Right. Okay. So this is your number 1 album.
It's my number 1.
It's my number 9 album.
Indeed.
So it's lower down on the list for me, and this is the album that nearly didn't make my list, funnily enough.
Indeed.
And I had to have a word with myself.
I see.
So, do you want to tell the people what it is?
It is Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins. And so whenever you say you have to have a word with yourself, did you initially just go, well, I'm not having that because it's too obvious?
Yeah, right. I've had an on-off relationship with the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yep.
When the first kind of came out, I struggled with Billy Corgan's voice.
Okay.
Quite a bit.
Yep.
Friends of mine were really into this, and I was like, nah, I'm not the Pumpkins guy. Right. I'm not into it. This album in particular wore me down to the point where, like, the big hooks, I came to love, right? And again, this is an album that, of everything on the list, I don't really go back to this as an album. If I'm going back to this, I go back to singles.
Oh, fine.
Right? I go back to, Disarm, I go back to Cherub Rock, I go back to, do you know what I mean? I go back to...
Rocket, Hummer.
Yeah, Rocket, Hummer, those songs, right?
Yep.
But by applying the same criteria that I applied to Judgment Night, those songs are strong enough that this makes my list.
I see, okay.
So I don't love this album as a whole piece.
Fine.
Although, I have good memories of it holding up, like from the days when I listened to it as an album. But the high points of it are great. But
I find it interesting as well, if you said that you go back to the singles, for me, because I was very into this, and that's why it's my number 1. I cannot say that it is a better album than In Utero, for example.
Yeah.
But I would be lying if I said that this wasn't the one I listened to the most this year. In '93, this fucking killed me, this album. Because, as I've said in the In Utero episode, that took me a while to get into. That took some work. That took a lot of repeated listens. I was instantly, from the opening drums of Cherub Rock, track 1, I was like, in so hard on this album the whole way through.
You wouldn't have got me to say that I liked this album until about 1995, 1996.
Okay, all right. Now, it was in from the start, but because I listened to it over and over and over, the singles were some of the least of my favourites. And so I don't go back to the singles. Cherub Rock, I'll absolutely make an exception for. I think it's fucking incredible. But the singles are not the big ones for me. This one that's playing at the minute, Geek USA, I remember jumping about my bedroom to this and doing air drums till my shoulders were sore because it got me so great.
See, again, I know this song well. I couldn't have told you what it's called.
Right.
And that's where I am with this record.
Sure, but exactly. For me, the Geek USA Silverfuck is another one, a real kind of rock heavy one, where Jimmy Chamberlain is just going off.
I mean,
on
that's the thing about this record. Jimmy Chamberlain is a fucking beast.
Jesus Christ! So those ones I loved. But then it also has like Soma and Mayonnaise, the really slow, beautiful ones. And, Soma especially, where it's the classic grunge thing of slow crashing with the big guitars, hit the pedals. But it does it so brilliantly and beautifully. Those were the ones I was listening to, and I fell in love with it so hard. And so this is the album for 1993 for me. In the same way that Quicksand probably got you, this fucking got me.
Yeah, sure, man.
I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And I was fervent about, Smashing Pumpkins are the best band around at the minute. They're only going to be getting bigger and better, which turned out not to be so true for me. Or at least this is their peak.
Sure.
This is not the peak, sorry. Gish is their peak. This is their commercial peak, and it's got some classic stuff on it. But after this, they fell off kind of hard for me. I think there's some stuff on Melancholy which is very good, but there's so much that is average.
Funnily enough, what I think is really interesting is we go back to last week.
Yeah.
Your number one hip hop record was Cypress Hill Black Sunday.
Absolutely.
And I think you can almost mirror that with Cypress Hill and Smashing Pumpkins, their journey in terms of albums.
Like Cypress Hill to Black Sunday.
Yeah, first album, innovative, blows your mind, fucking great.
Template.
Second album is almost a more polished reworking.
A distillation,
yeah. Third album, overblown.
Yeah.
Too ponderous in places. Could have done with a load of editing.
Very true.
Do you know what I mean? That's
Absolutely.
kind of
That's the trajectory of it.
That's the trajectory of it. Yeah. And then
and drugs fucked them both up.
And then their fourth record, both kind of slight departure. Interesting. Both albums have their fans. I'm, funnily enough, quite a reasonable fan of both of their fourth albums.
Really? Adore?
Yeah. Adore and Cypress Hill 4.
Right.
But I'm in the minority on those.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
That's I think that's just my observation, but I think that's quite interesting.
I like it. That works well for me.
As I say, I think Smashing Pumpkins were a band who I took against for reasons I'm not entirely sure about. A lot of them I think were around Billy Corgan's voice.
Well, the thing is, if you take against them because of Billy Corgan, you're entirely right. The guy's an arsehole.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even aware of him really at that time.
No,
he wasn't getting as much. He wasn't really getting that much coverage and stuff I was reading. But
And it wasn't as evident. He wasn't as overtly arsehole back then.
Yeah, but there was just something about the songs that I didn't like them as much, but they wore me down.
Yeah, fair
they
enough.
wore me down. And I was like, okay, I love this song. There's a certain point you get to where just facts overtake your bullshit.
Oh, this is all right.
And and it was a hard admitting as well, because I'd gone in pretty hard in that I thought they were shit.
And you can set yourself up as, he's the guy that doesn't like Pumpkins. Yeah, for sure.
Very much
and then
so.
if you do go, well, then you're losing face a little bit.
Yeah. It's like the Boris Johnson of grunge. I'm definitely not going to change my mind on this. And here we are again.
Oh.
Anyway, so look,
There you are.
1993. It's been a weird year for the podcast. It's taken us a long time to get through 1993. And we've had some high points, which have made it in here, and we've had some very, very low points.
Oh god, some of the worst albums we've ever done have been in this season.
For me, the reason we started this podcast was we had this idea that these are the years that we say are the most important for us for music. But we weren't listening to what the mainstream was, and I don't think we've had a year yet where the contrast has been starker. Where you go, there is this amazing buffet available. On this table over here, you've got like exotic, fresh, perfectly ripe fruit. You've got perfectly cooked, rare cuts of meat, the best cuts. Food prepared by the greatest chefs in the world over here. And then over here, you've just got like a load of fucking pies that some cunts microwaved. And the British public are just like, give me those pies, give me those pies.
Greggs are a massive chain.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like all of this stuff is out there, but these records are what people are buying. And it's...
when you look through, the only ones that we've had to do that were number ones that I would say fit in with what we would have in our top tens are realistically Nirvana, obviously, I mean, some people had a U2 in there. Depeche Mode is the other obvious one, and maybe, to an extent, Lenny Kravitz and Suede. We didn't have them in our top tens, but they kind of fit the mold a bit.
Sure, but that's an indie rock, mate. But there've been surprises along the way as well.
Oh, sure. The Mariah Carey album.
What a surprise!
Really good album.
Didn't expect at all to like that.
No, very pleasantly surprised by the Janet Jackson one.
Brilliant, yeah. Excellent stuff.
Yeah,
So it's been an interesting year. It really is. I'm really interested to see what happens in '94.
94 is going to be weird.
I mean, I've looked a little bit ahead of '94. It's not an entirely easy road.
No, it really isn't. You're going to come up against some very harsh brick walls of albums, I feel, for you.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard on this podcast from our pal Stephen Hill from True Occult Pop. He's going to be joining us for an episode of Shakademus and Pliers.
Imagine this.
Can you imagine?
Good God.
I mean, that motherfucker had better be bringing a big shield.
Dear me.
Oh man. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so look, 93, what a wild ride, man. It's
been great.
I have thoroughly enjoyed doing it with you, my friend, as always.
It's been absolutely terrific fun. It really has.
And bizarrely, I think we've tripled our listenership over the course of 1993. So to every one of you guys out there that has joined us on this journey through 1993, thank you. We'll be back in 1994, early in 2023.
Indeed, yeah. Whenever we can get ourselves back up and running.
I'm hopeful that my schedule is going to be a little bit more relaxed next year. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to be a little bit more regular.
We shall see.
But we shall see. I've said that before and I've been wrong. So,
true enough.
But we keep on trucking.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, thank you as always. Wish you, if you are listening to this upon release, we wish you
pre-Christmas,
very fucking Merry Christmas, great New Year. Hope everything that you want comes true. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you use it as an excuse to just get fucked up anyway. If you don't get fucked up and you don't celebrate Christmas,
why are you listening to this podcast?
Why are you listening to this podcast? Maybe this is what you do instead.
We're big among the Mormons.
Yeah, there are a lot of Mormons that like us.
Yeah, that's true.
So thank you so much, though, guys. We will be back with the same old shit, really.
Lovely. Right, nice one. Thank you very much indeed. See you later. Thank you for checking out this episode of Pop Collaborate and Listen. It was produced and edited by us, for which we can only apologise. We're on Twitter at PCL Podcast, on Instagram also at PCL Podcast, and Facebook.com/PCL Podcast. All of these, plus links to our various Spotify playlists, etc., are on our website, which is PCLpodcast.com. Please feel free to get in contact via any of the social media or on PCLmusicpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello there. Yeah, it's me, Stephen Hill from the True Cult Pop podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Sam Slight. How you doing, Sam?
I'm well, thank you, Steve. How the devil are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks, Dave Christer, and all of the Pop Collaborate and Listen listeners. Actually, none of the listeners invited us onto the show. I don't know why I'm thanking them, but
well, they're probably lovely, aren't they? So that's why
they probably are. Yeah, they're probably very nice. Hey, thanks to the guys for asking me and Sam to do a little bit on 1993 and our favourite albums of 1993. Here's a fun fact for you listening. I was 13 when this time period happened for most of it. 2 months I was at 12 actually, because my birthday was in March.
Oh,
anyway,
what a funny story.
But how old were you in 1993, Sam?
-1.
Imagine being not born. Pathetic. How embarrassing for you.
Young twat.
You young moron.
Oh.
So we've been asked to pick our favourite album from 1993, and you weren't even alive, you sad idiot. What are you doing? What are you going to do? You must not know anything about this.
I mean, that's the problem. Like, as far as I'm concerned, March 28th, 1994 was the start of existence,
humanity.
Basically. Yeah. I'm like a kind of extremely fundamentalist creationist.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got plenty of evidence to prove that wrong.
Disagree.
1993 is an interesting year. I mean, look, when we go through the albums that came out that year, I think it's some amazing ones. But I don't usually sort of think to myself like, when we did 92, and I mean, God, they've got 94 next, which is an all-time classic landmark year
Definitely.
in music, I think. And, you know, you can look at 91, 92, 94. 93 does feel like a slightly bit of an odd one out in comparison to those other years. But you think, you know, there are great records that came out in all different genres. You've got, you know, 36 Chambers, Enter the Wu-Tang came out that year. Got Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest in hip-hop, like the two fucking great albums. Siamese Dream Verses by Pearl Jam. In Utero by Nirvana came out that year as well. Last Splash by The Breeders, all in that kind of alternative rock thing. Modern Life is Rubbish by Blur, sorry Dave. In kind of the big, huge kind of arena pop bands, you've got Zooropa by U2. I've spoken about the kind of the last great U2 album. Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode. Self-titled The Wedding Album by Duran Duran, the one with Come Undone and Ordinary World, and they're brilliant albums. Debut by Bjork, I know they don't really like that, but that is still really good. In metal, you've got Soul Searching Sun, River Runs Red, I should say.
Yes.
Life of Agony came out that year. Don't know why I said Soul Searching Sun, it's my favourite. Chaos AD by Sepultura, Bloody Kisses by Typo Negative. I absolutely fucking love that record. You got Carcass, Heartwork is brilliant. Wolverine Blues by Entombed, so influential in, you know, the last decade of sort of crusty, rumbling D-beat hardcore. Most of that inspired by Wolverine Blues. I was very, very close to picking that. It's a great record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, its footprint on hardcore and like death and roll, like Cavell Attack and stuff like that as well. I mean, I suppose that comes maybe a little bit late with To Ride, Shoot Straight and Speak the Truth, but yeah, Wolverine Blues are fucking brilliant.
Absolutely massive. And the biggest selling death metal album ever made, Covenant by Morbid Angel, came out that year as well. Like, another really, really great record. So it was a good year. Like, it was a good year. But I have picked, hope you don't mind me going first, Sam.
Not at all.
You know, being as I was alive during all that. But I picked Slip by Quicksand is my favourite. Now, Quicksand are one of the all-time great kind of should have been massive bands, I think. Because in 93, when grunge was happening, and then you kind of... There's almost a moment where post-hardcore stroke emo looked like it was going to be a big deal. And I think if it was going to be a big deal at that point, Quicksand were going to be the band that did it. This came out on Polydor, so it came out on a kind of subsidiary of a major label. And that kind of melding of New York hardcore, alternative rock, and I mean, there's a Smiths cover on the bonus track of this record, and that kind of like Johnny Marr, Morrissey, that kind of romantic poeticism, I think is amazing. And there is just something about this record which still to this day, I can't believe that not everybody in the world knows a song like Dine Alone, which is just phenomenal. I mean, Phaser, the opening track, I want to see the damn things. Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die, the two geezers from Fall Out Boy, and Scott Ian from Anthrax, Rob Canagiano from Volbeat, their band, right? And they covered Phaser, and they did not do it anywhere near as well as the Quicksand original, to give you an idea of how great they are. Like, just everything on this record feels like it should have appealed to anyone who had any interest in forward-thinking, emotionally open guitar rock music at that point. It's a brilliant record. It's such a brilliant record. And I mean, you know, they've got 4 albums. I think all of them are fantastic in their own right. I'd even chuck in the Rival School stuff, which I think is brilliant as well. But for me, this album, Slip, is legit like one of the all-time great records that should have sold a cajillion copies, and it ended up, you know, I don't think it even charted. What a shame. And they split up quite soon after it. Within like 2 years, they'd split up. Bummer.
Yeah.
But that's my pick.
It's a fucking good pick, man. I mean, yeah, as someone who was not there at the time, yeah, I'm a latecomer to Quicksand, definitely. I mean, I discovered them through Sergio Vega, obviously becoming the bassist of Deftones for best part of 13, 14 years. How long was he with Deftones?
Yeah,
he was with them for a long time. So yeah, I then went back and listened to them from there. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. As you say, Dine Alone, I mean, surely that should be just an established classic in the kind of alt metal, hardcore, post-hardcore, I don't know, the tapestry of all that stuff that's come in the wake of it. I mean, yeah, Quicksand are awesome. I feel like I still don't know them as well as I kind of owe it to myself to know them, because you look at the pedigree of band members. I mean, you say, what was Shrifles, who'd go on to do Rival Schools, etc., and Sergio Vega, who I love the work of in Deftones and in Quicksand. I think it's a brilliant album. I would possibly just plump for Manic Compression as my favourite one, but it's a close fought thing. I think Quicksand are a remarkably consistent band. As you say, 4 albums, not really a bad second amongst them. So, yeah.
Walter is such a dude. I mean, the music that he's produced as well. Love that No Division, that Hot Water Music album that he produced. Amazing. Like, wrote all the first Civ album. It's brilliant. Like, he's just a legendary character within punk and hardcore and guitar music. And he pulls like hooks from nowhere. I mean, he's the Head to Wall, the second track on this record, and it's just this like kind of, it's not really grinding, but it's like this kind of like phasery sort of downstruck riff that doesn't feel like you should be able to get any sort of hook from it, but like that song is now in my head just by mentioning it. It's brilliant. I mean, I'm like, punk bands doing instrumentals, do you need it? But like Baphomet is just an amazing instrumental, like so good. I mean, like, everything on it. It's 39 minutes. It's basically a perfect 39 minutes. What a band they are. Amazing. That would be my pick. What's yours, Sam?
Mine is also a debut LP released in the year of our Lord, 1993. I've gone for one that you definitely know. I know pretty much inside out. And I think a lot of people listening might know, but might not like. I've gone for Undertow by Tool.
Yeah, do you know what? I deliberately didn't mention that because I thought that would be what you picked, to be honest. But yes.
We were talking beforehand and it was like, what's the best album of 1993? And I mean, basically, it is in utero, but I think neither of us wanted to talk about that because it's been done so many times before, including by Dave and Krista in a fantastic episode of our Collaborate and Listen a little while back, which I thought was an excellent one. So I think rather than retread that ground, let's talk about some quite up itself prog rock. But is it really? And is it more just kind of alt metal? And are they all just having a laugh? Yeah, I love Undertow. It was a Tool album I came to a little bit later in my sort of Tool listening career, as it were. I got into them just after the release of 10,000 Days. And it would have been Parabole and Parabola and Schism that I first heard as part of, I think it was Guitar Hero World Tour. There was like a boss stage where you played 3 Tool songs back to back, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is weird.
Vicarious was on it as well. Excellent.
Yeah, Vicarious was. I think that was outside of that mission area, so to speak. But yeah, that was where I first heard Tool, and I was basically hooked from there. Went out, bought all the CDs. And Undertow, to be fair, I would probably rank bottom in terms of Tool LPs, but that's the strength of Tool's output that I still think this is one of, if not the best album of 1993. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I was lucky enough to see them for the first time in 2019. They announced a European tour, but they weren't doing any UK dates. So I was like, well, I don't know if they're ever actually going to come here. So I went over to Prague basically for about 24 hours to go and see them. And they did Intolerance live, and I was like, fuck me, this song's so good. It's so heavy. And in amongst the kind of more lengthy and ponderous material that they'd go on to do with Lateralis and 10,000 Days, getting something as concise and just angry and riffy as Intolerance, it's fantastic. And then obviously Prison Sex and Sober, the 2 big singles. I mean, Adam Jones's stop motion animation. My God, I can't talk. Stop motion animation that makes up the video for Prison Sex is so disturbing, so horrible. But then, you got like Bottom with Henry Rollins coming in to add a bit of punk credence. I mean, I suppose. Yeah. Do you think it's a stretch to say that this era of Tool probably were listening to My War, like when they were starting out in Green Jelly and then coming here? Because it's quite sludgy more than it is necessarily proggy, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like this is definitely Tool kind of emerging from the sludge. This is kind of like the first evolutionary step of Tool, isn't it? And Tool, for a very, very, very long time, Tool, I would have gone like that. They are my favourite band, and I still absolutely love them. I do think you're right. I do think this is the weakest. I think it's
hard to say, isn't it?
It's the first Tool album I owned,
right?
And it's the first time I really properly heard them, and that it was very, very close to being my pick. I mean, I thought yours would be this, Pork Soda by Primus, or maybe even In on the Kill Taker by Fugazi.
Yeah.
All great shouts. But yeah, I think because Tool have evolved to such staggering heights in the aftermath of this record, it's hard to go back to this record and be as like blown away by it. But in terms of like song for song, it is definitely the most instantaneous and pummeling Tool record, definitely. And you say, that bass tone, Adam Jones's weird guitar. I think Maynard seems to have just come fully formed as one of the most esoteric, odd, and
gifted singers
downright
ever.
gifted. Yeah, like without any question. So yeah, it's a great shout. It is a great shout, and it's a brilliant record. Yeah, and it's a good year.
It is a good year. I mean, as you say, In on the Kill Taker by Fugazi and Pork Soda by Primus, the darkest Primus album. Fucking brilliant. Love it. Might stick My Name is Mud on after we finish this.
Okay, well, we finished now. That's
okay, I'll
Thanks
do it now.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next year for night. It's gonna. Do you think this chat in 13 minutes is a lot? Fuck me, 1994. It's like every album was brilliant, basically, wasn't it?
Pretty much. Yeah.
See you then.